short now, and then you can kick it up whenever you want.
Hello there, world, wherever you are, and welcome to the very first edition of the There Will Be Geek podcast. My name's Mike. We have here...
I'm Cav.
And I'm Shawnee.
And we are going to be talking nonsense about all things geekery and nerdery related for the next half hour or so. But who are we? Why should you listen to us? Why are you listening to me now? Well, I'm going to pass you over to one of my colleagues now to give us our credentials, and we'll take it from there. So...
Okay, so I'm a writer. I've been writing for various print and online publications for several years now, including Metro Magazine, DoubleJump.com, and Chud.com.
Me? I'm just a girl gamer. I've been playing games my whole life, starting off with the Atari back in the 80s. Now I've upgraded, got all the new consoles, all the old consoles, and pretty much just spend most of my time gaming when I'm not working or doing fun podcasts like these.
And as for myself, I'm an enthusiast. I've just been watching TV and film and generally specifically focusing an awful lot on kind of British genre television to do with science fiction and fantasy for an awfully long time. We all figure that we know a reasonable amount of subjects that we like, and we wanted to share that with the rest of the world. We thought this might be fun. So, ladies and gentlemen, our very first subject, and it is a thorny one, Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice. Now, we all went to see this as a group on Tuesday night at the rather wonderful Sun Theatre in Yarraville, here in Melbourne, Australia. And we all came out of it with a few opinions. Now, what we're going to try and do to start off with is to avoid spoilers for the very first section here, partly on the basis of we're well aware of the fact that there may well be some people out there who have not seen this movie yet, and we don't really want to spoil that experience for them or help them prejudge it too much. But we will be going into a little bit more depth later on to various different things that we did notice about the film, and things that we thought maybe could possibly have done with some improvement. We'll go on that later on. For the moment, Cav, what were your thoughts on this movie?
Oh, God. Yeah, I pretty much hated it, to be honest with you.
Shawnee?
I liked it. Like, it's not a great movie. It's enjoyable to watch, but it gets a bit tedious at sometimes, and you just want to strangle emo Batman.
Yeah, I think emo Batman, that's one way of putting this. I was having a discussion with this the other day, which we'll come to a little bit later on, whereas it's less Superman, more Ubermensch. There are certain kind of vaguely fascistic tones to the film that were not exactly what we would have liked. I think part of the problem we face with this is there is such a big groundswell of expectation with such a pair of iconic screen presences that have been around for an awfully long time. I mean, it's like getting on for it's 80, 90 years thereabouts since the two of them have been kind of with us in one form or another. And this is being the first time that they've actually appeared together on the same screen, or at least the same kind of cinema format. And as a result of which, there was always going to be a degree of expectation, which there was always going to be problematic to live up to. My main thoughts on this one was the fact that the film was visually stunning, but extremely bitty. There's very little coherence going on with regards to dialogue, motivation of characters, and overall, it's a bit of a mess, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I was very sort of leery going into it because obviously we were going in, we knew we were going to review it on the podcast, and I was kind of, trying to maintain some kind of critical distance because, full disclosure, I don't like Zack Snyder. I haven't liked any of his previous films. The Day of the Dead remake was fun.
Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead, that's it. I've just found him with the rest of his films to, sort of being he's kind of the epitome of style over substance. And, if it was just that, it would be fine, but he tends to sort of layer his films in this sense of false weight to give the impression that, he's saying things that are really important and deep and meaningful. But the problem is there isn't really much of a sense of storytelling about him, and it always comes out more than a little dumb. And I found this one extra dumb, actually. He's doubled down on dumb.
There was an overriding gesture, I think, which won't work so well in the podcast format, but at various different points in the movie, all three of us were screaming, or mouthing, "What?" and opening our arms and go, "What the hell?" towards the screen, and we all noticed it at various different occasions. So each one of us had this moment of realising what the hell just happened. I came home after the movie, and my fiancée was asking me, "So how was the movie?" And my one-word summary for this was, dumb.
Mm.
And that's the thing. It's not. We're not down on superhero movies. We're planning on one of our future specials on this podcast is going to be on the subject of superhero movies. We're all big fans of the Nolan trilogy. We're all big fans of Marvel's output. We're all very much looking forward to things like the Suicide Squad movie. I very much enjoyed Man of Steel up until the final kind of climactic finale section. And it had an awful lot of interesting and good things to say. So it's not particularly DC or anything else that we are down on here. It's just this particular movie really could have been so much and delivered so very, very little of that.
Well, tried to be everything at once, including setting up this, this much-mooted Warner Brothers DC cinematic universe. And
Yep.
I mean, it was a bunch of stuff happening, none of which seemed to have a hell of a lot of thought put into it.
Shawnee.
Yes. I don't know. It made me angry. I'm a huge Batman fan. Like, I walked into this going, yeah, Batman rocks, woo! Around town before the movie was released, you could, at train stations, they had these special billboardy sign things up. You could hit the button to say yes for Superman or yes for Batman, and, it kept countering, every time I would hit the Batman one, because I'm like, screw Superman, Batman rocks. And this movie just totally changed that for me. Now I'm just like, no. I can't deal with Batman anymore, and that it's kind of disheartening.
You remember the day when Batman was the world's greatest detective? This is my problem, right? In this movie, he's basically this reactionary dum-dum who decides he wants to kill the crap out of Superman and doesn't for once show any evidence that he's actually tried to do any investigation or work out who this weird, mysterious, seemingly all-powerful alien guy is. He just decides, no, he must die, he's dangerous. And then it just goes on from there. Whereas the Batman as originally conceived would actually go and investigate this guy and learn something about him. And as the film shows later, which I'm not going to say for now, of course, there's plenty of evidence out there that he could have gone and accessed and looked at. It runs straight into this confrontation. Not that the reasons given are necessarily invalid. But there's no sort of there's no sign of rational thought from Batman. That's not what the character's meant to be about.
I should say at this point as well, I think one of the things we all came out of this saying was, although some of the performances were, in a polite way, idiosyncratic, which again we'll get to a little bit later on, I don't think any of us had any particular problems with the performances of the actors within the movie.
No.
Particularly Affleck has sometimes come in for some stick with regards to this. He, even with a less than brilliant offering in terms of the scripting for Batman, he acquitted himself fairly well, and I would be very happy to see him as a Batman in some kind of future movie on the basis of he can actually carry that. He's very much did the best with a bad job. Henry Cavill is suitably vacant as Superman, because really Superman is somewhat of an empty vessel anyway, and Gal Gadot, what little we saw of her was excellent as Wonder Woman. I think I came out of this the other day and I came up with a list of pros and cons, because I think at the time when we came out, Cav was incredulous, I think would be a right fair way of putting it, and Shawnee was fuming. And
Just
I
a little
was
angry.
Yeah, well, exactly. It was perfectly reasonable. I think at the time I tried to hold on to the that wasn't as bad as it could have been. It had some good moments. So it was terrible in parts, but I wanted to retain some of that positivity.
That's like stepping in shit and going, well, at least I had my shoe on. It's still stepping in shit.
It's like Christmas with the relatives. You know that technically it's supposed to be a great idea, but while you're there, it's going, no, just no.
Anyway, the more I went on throughout this week, the more I started to reevaluate my position. But I did come up with a list of pros and cons with regards to the movie. And I want to go through some of the pros first. So, the action scenes were well done. Now, from my own perspective, particularly, one of the problems I found with Man of Steel was a purely practical one. I'm one of those unfortunate individuals who gets motion sickness from far too much shaky cams in movies. So when I went to see Man of Steel, I came home and felt a bit ill for the rest of the day. I've had the similar things with like Blair Witch and the Bourne films and very similar things like that. So that's a bit of a problem. And I didn't encounter any of this with the action in Batman vs Superman. It was well done in terms of the action. Particularly the climactic fight, whilst overblown and overwrought, was very well done visually. Wonder Woman was excellent in there, possibly because of the fact she was barely in it at all, but her presence was very good. The Batmobile looked great. Jeremy Irons' performance as Alfred, wonderful. I mean, again, Jeremy Irons is one of those people who could turn up, read the phone book on screen, and you'd probably be, yep, I'm okay, I'm happy with that. He's an excellent performer, and you know you're in safe hands with him. Visually, it was quite appealing. Even the palette wasn't too dark. I mean, the problem with Man of Steel was, again, it was a bit dark, and you still have some of that here, but there is more happening here, so there's less time for us to get too ponderous on the dark. It's quite well... it's a good-looking beast of a film. I will definitely give it that. And there's even a few decent cameos in there. I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson it's a lovely little touch. I was really rather pleased with that, because from what I gather, he's a lifelong fan of Superman, so good for him on that one. However, we then get to the very large list of cons.
Yeah. Oh, well, all right. First off the bat, as far as the color palette goes, I actually disagree with that.
Right.
Did you know? Anyone notice that? You know the new Superman suit.
Yes.
The actual shade of it is almost exactly the same as that on drunk, angry Superman from Superman 3.
I hadn't thought of that.
Why couldn't we have had that? I preferred that Superman.
Oh God, yeah, that would have been so much more fun.
Flicking peanuts and screaming incoherently. It would have been so much better. But even then, I mean, the sequence that keeps coming to mind is the very meager attempts the film makes to actually show Superman actually being heroic.
Yeah.
There's a montage quite early on. It's just drenched this kind of bleached out color scheme,
like sepia, isn't it?
Like almost like sepia, and everything's in ultra slow motion. The whole thing just looks like a drag.
Yeah.
It just looks like Superman going, oh, the rocket's blowing up. I better grab this. Okay. Oh, these people are trapped in a flood. I'm gonna float over them. What you want? It's like, and we'll get into this a bit later on.
Superman as Neil from The Young Ones.
Yeah, almost. I mean, the film seems to have, and same with Man of Steel to a large extent, seems to have such a huge problem with the concept of heroism, and it bleeds through in the look of the film. Like it's just visually, I don't know, just soporific in the worst sense of the word.
See, this is the thing with regards to that. That is something that, in and of itself, I can forgive. Purely on the basis of, if it's just the visual palette of the movie that is something that is not all it could be, then if in other areas it makes up for that, then I'm fine. I mean, we've all seen movies that are a little bit dark and dingy and so on and so forth, and that can work to a film's advantage in many ways, particularly if you're trying to set a particular tone. However, we then get to another problem with this movie. Dear God, the dialogue. The dialogue is clunky. It's poorly done. I can't remember any of the individual kind of pithy one-liner moments, but none of them made sense, and pretty much all the standard situation was for a one-liner that would be kind of pithily delivered and wittily delivered and something you could just latch onto very easily in a particular important scene would be clunky and as if someone's tripping over themselves, and it's one of those that doesn't sound like someone natural speech, but that also doesn't even sound like you've thought out a really nice witty remark. That's just a collection of words that have been vomited up from the depths of your subconscious. And that's the best you can do in this situation. I mean, really, there are so many situations that remind the main reminder I got from some of the clunkiness of the dialogue was Attack of the Clones, because that's the only similarly poorly thought out scripting I can think of. I mean, it's a step up from Attack of the Clones because there's moments where people actually have conversations that sound like they could be real, but so much of it was just poorly done. I mean, just to take an example right from the end of the movie, where they're desperately trying to set up like the next 2 or 3 movies that are coming within this Justice League franchise, where Affleck's Batman says, I reckon we should get everyone together. Oh, why should you do that? Just a feeling. Again, there would be so many better ways of putting that together. It feels rushed and poorly thought out. And so much of the dialogue does. I mean, we're not even. At some point, we will get onto the Martha section.
Well, to me, it's like the language and the context and how it's used. It reminds me of a comic book. Like, they have like all these starts and stops, and it's halting because, you know, you put your own spin on it when you're reading it. And they have these fantastic one-liners because, you know, they sound good in your head, but when you actually say them out loud, you sound like a freaking wanker. So I don't know if that was like an intentional thing, like they're trying to throw back to the comics by having these one-liners in there, like, you will, or, you know, weird shit like that. But I'd like to think that they are trying to throw back to the comics with them, rather than it was just a shit writer. But
See, but this is the thing again. If you compare it, I mean, we can't help but compare this to other superhero movies because there's been enough of them. I mean, there's all of the Marvel ones, there's the Nolan Batmans, there's the Spider-Man, the X-Men, all of the various different ones. And realistically, I mean, enough of them have had enough throwbacks to comic books in terms of comic book language as well. I mean, frankly, again, this was another comparison I made the other day. This is one that makes Batman and Robin look reasonable. And that's all about throwing back to the comics.
Well, I mean, a perfect example of it is Batman and Superman's first meeting. Now, we can't spoil this, because this entire scene has been in the bloody trailers.
Yes, and that's another problem which we'll get to later.
Where they finally face up, and they have like a 15-second conversation, where Superman goes, "The bat is dead. Retire. The signal goes up, don't come to it." And Batman gives the line, you know, "Do you bleed? You know, you will do." And that's it. That's literally, if you've seen that in the trailers, there is nothing else to that scene. It feels like a wrestling promo, not like an actual scene that's supposed to build, and especially at this point in the movie with these two characters finally coming up against each other. And all it is a couple of one-liners that sound designed to sound cool in a trailer.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Along with another set of the other time when the two alter egos meet of Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne, and it's a Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne. I love it. All of that the nonsense that Lex tries to do about bringing those two characters together. And again, it's very much okay. So, Lex Luthor, why would you know an insignificant reporter who's barely starting out, who you've never met before in your life, or have never acknowledged that they haven't met before? And why are you going, "Ooh, you've met this guy. Ooh, I'm gonna drop in a couple of things that are going to be spoilers for later on. I'm foreshadowing. Look at me foreshadowing. Aren't I foreshadowing well?" And this is another thing. Lex Luthor. No disrespect at all to Jesse Eisenberg. He does the best with what he's got. But my God Almighty, there is no good reason anywhere for what he does.
Well, I thought it was like in the original, like when Lex Luthor first started out, he was like this crazy mad scientist with the crazy red hair and stuff. Like, he wasn't really, you know, the suave, charismatic Lex Luthor that everyone knows now.
But at the same time, I mean, there is not even any internal logic. He's not even doing the Joker of being, because I can, because I think it's a great thing, and this is going to be fun. There is no consistency to what he says. There's sort of hints at daddy issues, but then they're forgotten about. There's hints that, I'm going to try and kill Superman. No, I'm going to get somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
It felt, I mean, to me it just felt like all performance and no character.
Exactly.
It was an actor basically throwing everything he had at the wall and throwing every possible tick he could find into it in a way that just, it made the actual sort of acting technique of it more visible than any sort of consistency of character underneath.
Yeah.
Probably because there wasn't any. But.
Well, and again, that's the problem. I think most of the rest of the cast probably found exactly the same problem, because there is very little there. There are also, within the movie itself, there are too many things that are thrown at the wall just to see if they stick, or just because, that'll be a cool thing to do, without any kind of referencing beforehand. I mean, take for example, there is a scene towards the end during the climactic fight where you have.
Should we say spoilers now?
Well,
We are spoiler?
Oh, we're definitely spoiling
You were
everything
in
right
spoiler
now.
territory.
There is a scene towards the end of the movie with regards to the fight with Doomsday. Okay, that's fair enough. Everyone's fighting Doomsday, and Doomsday and Superman fly off up towards the edge of the atmosphere. And suddenly, from out of nowhere, you cut back to, so the US military is now monitoring this, and so what we're going to do is we're going to send you've got a nuclear missile ready to shoot at both of them. Oh, that's interesting. Where did this come from? And again, a basic little bit of foreshadowing before that within the structure of the movie. At some point earlier on, a little discussion just between two members of the government could have said, that's a thing that comes in. And it's one of those things that it comes out of nowhere. And it's right, okay, so, yeah, you just decided to do that.
Yeah, because the thing with the nukes comes straight from Dark Knight Returns. Like, the exact same thing happens. And in a lot of ways, I kind of feel that, he'd done Watchmen already, and his approach to Zack Snyder's approach to Batman in this one was to do his Dark Knight. It felt like an excuse, basically, to put that chain of events in the film, where Superman gets hit by a nuke, he basically dies and gets shriveled up, and the sun revives him.
And I've got no problem with that, but again, there's no reference to this previously within the movie. I mean, being true to a piece of source material is no bad thing at all. But a comic book is not a movie. You have to be able to present the movie as if presenting the source material for the first time, and not just assuming that everyone in the audience is going to know about it, because a large chunk of people won't.
Well, ideally, you're supposed to just tell the bloody story your movie's supposed to tell, and not just shoehorn in something from somewhere else, especially considering what happened subsequently to that as well. That makes it seem especially extraneous.
Now, you did have, Shani, you spotted a couple of things that I hadn't spotted, which is to do with other source material.
It's the gaming!
Yes. So, which game are we referring to?
We'd be referring to Arkham Knight. Well, Batman Arkham Knight. There's a whole series of them, which is like Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Origins, Blackgate, blah, 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 blah. We'll just stick with Arkham Knight. In these games, you play as Batman, you get to do a whole heap of cool shit, you get a whole heap of gadgets that you can upgrade and change, and like the way that you fight against, the villains of the city, and, take them out without actually killing them, because Batman doesn't kill people. Yeah, okay. In this movie, though, I thought that the way that he was fighting were references back to this. Like, in the games, you could drop smoke pellets to fly up and away, and, no one would know where you were. And he did that a few times, and that was cool. The remote hacking device as well, that when he's down in, the basement-y bit in Lex Luthor's grand book thing, I don't know what he was celebrating. I wasn't paying attention because I was just distracted by how annoying he was. But Batman goes in and he has, the little device that he puts on that does his hacking for him while he can go away or
that's
further
right.
apart from it, which is kind of like what happens in the games as well. The one thing that really triggered it for me was there's a fight in a warehouse, and Batman fires his, I don't know, it's a gun or something, fires these little itty-bitty things that land on the guns of the bad guys. In the games, it's a disruptor, and depending on how much upgrade it or what you choose to do with it, you can actually stick these things, fire them from quite a distance away onto the guns, and it will either just make the gun misfire, not fire at all, just electrocute the people that you're doing with, as a means to taking them out. And when he did that, I just went, oh, okay, so maybe, they're pulling some stuff in from the games, which I thought was really cool.
And the thing is, with that doesn't need to be referenced to, it's just a nice little cool touch.
Yeah, it's great to see that, that they are aware that there are these other things out there that involve Batman rather than just the straight comics. There are the games as well, and they bring in new elements because, you know, you can do so much more in there. So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. That's what I really liked about it.
Yeah, it's funny. I never picked up on that. But when he said that, it all fell into place. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right.
And I think that is that's one of the things the film did quite well with regards to this. And as I said, she was underused, but Wonder Woman, every time she was on screen, everything became better.
She had 16 lines. 16 lines for 2.5 hours.
But again, she's only supposed to be a relatively minor character that's sort of introduced. And again, this is one of those things, the trailer. The trailer should never have had her in it,
No.
realistically speaking. The trailer is one of a disturbing trend of so many trailers of let's pick as many of the good bits as we can. And also, let's, by the way, refer to when the information that Batman has hacked out of Lex's system is effectively just a bunch of trailer clips. So there is a clip for Cyborg, there is a clip for The Flash, and there is a clip for Aquaman, yes.
But you know, it's good that LexCorp has a graphic designer on board who could actually design logos for each of these superheroes to put on the files. You know,
yes.
that's really a nice touch.
That guy probably gets paid more than I do.
Yeah.
I want to be Lex Luthor's, like, folder designer. I could do that. It'd be easy. Flash, lightning bolt. Aquaman, I could do that.
Wonder Woman, double W. And I say and interesting enough, there's no Superman, there's no Batman. These are supposed to be meta-humans, aren't they?
Yes. Just special ones.
Talking of The Flash, first of all, there is the thing of, apparently the Flash there is not the Flash from the TV series.
No.
No, it's definitely not the Flash from the TV series. But here's the other thing. This relates back to something else that was the... Huh? What? Huh? What's a... Dream sequences.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Oh, yeah.
There was a dream sequence in a dream sequence.
Exactly. Now, the thing is, I had no idea, and it wasn't particularly explicitly obvious from that dream sequence who the person in red was. Now, granted, a whole bunch of the fans who may well have known the source material and a bunch of other things like that, they may well have gone, oh, that's the Flash. And even at the time I thought, is that the Flash?
Yeah, I had that.
I wasn't certain.
It took me a moment to go, okay, because he doesn't look like the Flash that I know. Like, he's got dark hair that's like in a ponytail or something.
Oh, not even that, but in the dream sequence, when he's all kind of... That's the Flash who bursts through.
Oh, I didn't even realise that was him.
And exactly this. The only reason I know about this is from subsequent reviews that I have read or encountered on YouTube or what have you. This is a problem. Because there is obviously... the prophetic dream of the future where you've got kind of a whole world of armies at Superman's disposal and Batman seems to be some kind of a brave resistance fighter or what have you. The thing is that that was, for all of its problems, I can understand that as a kind of, if it was made slightly less coherent and more obviously a dream, then that would have actually worked quite well as a little dream sequence, even on its own. But the fact that there's that, and then there's the other prophetic thing of the Flash coming back and giving the warnings, that's clunky exposition.
It was just weirdly delivered as well. Like, I mean, the whole tone of it, because he appears out of this portally, tiny, lightning-y thing that has so much stuff going on you can barely see what he looks like, and he's screaming these lines out, and it actually made it hard to follow.
Yeah, I had no clue what was going on there.
It had this nightmarish kind of feel to it that I don't know they were actually going for. Yeah. It just made it confusing.
Well, again, I mean, hell, we start with a dream sequence right at the beginning. The whole thing of Bruce Wayne's parents getting killed again. Because let's face it, we've not been told about how he's a poor orphan all that often. We really need to know more about that sort of thing. Honestly,
I got excited when I saw the Batman origin story thing with the kid, because I was like, they're gonna go into Superman's origin story. This is gonna be cool. Nope.
No, it's a dream sequence where he falls down into the bats, but then suddenly he spreads his arms and the bats carry him upwards to... And yeah, that's another dream.
Yeah, that's when I wiped my hands of the film. Like, at the start, the kids running and stuff, I like the cinematography of it. I can word. And I was like, yeah, that's going to be kind of cool. I like the feel of this. And then, you know, he falls down, then all the bats are there, and I'm like, the kid's not scared. I'd be shitting myself.
See,
and then the bats carried him up, and I'm like, nope.
I would
Done.
pay the shit out of ticket to go and see Chinny Ben and his magic bats. And that brings me to another thing as well. Like I say, the performances were not good. Gal Gadot was great. Affleck was great. Henry Cavill, he hasn't really got that much to work with anyway.
I don't know. Did either of you see in the lead up to this movie coming out, there's a video that went out of Henry Cavill with a bunch of kids asking if they like Superman or Batman better? No. Well, in that video, what got me was it's just him as him. And there was sort of a warmth about the guy and a sense of good humoredness that I looked and went, yeah, I could see that guy being Superman.
Yeah.
In these movies, no. Because he's having to play as this miserable kind of mopey
well, you'd
dick.
be miserable too if everyone was just shitting on you. The thing is, he's Superman. He can't be everywhere all the time. And people are getting angry at him because, you know, he can't save everyone. And, you know, he's got to decide who does he save. Like, there was a thing about how he couldn't hear Martha crying or whatever when she was being kidnapped. And it's like, all right, well, one, she's in friggin' Smallville. And two, if he did, he'd probably be picking up everyone else in, like, the 10 million mile radius and their cries for help.
That was you were saying that there was the deleted scene that was put out the other day. Or actually, no, this was it. I think this was mentioned as something that was cut out of the movie by Zack Snyder the other day, which was to do with this idea of making it a little bit darker by Superman saying, "Look, I can't hear all of the things all the time. I have to filter."
Yeah.
Because otherwise I would go mad because there's so much going on at once, which sort of makes sense, and I don't mind that level of darkness. And here's what comes down to this. With all of this, darkness is not a problem. Having a dark movie to tell this story, that's fine. And again, most of the themes of Man of Steel were really fairly dark and a little bit different and contrary to what we've been used to in cinema, Superman rather. And that worked quite well. The problem with Man of Steel comes with the kind of the big climactic fight, which makes little or no sense and doesn't do wonders for Superman's character. But this film is dark and dumb. We were having this discussion earlier on about the potential Aronofsky Batman, where this principle was that Batman immediately after his parents have died, or Bruce Wayne immediately after his parents have died, runs away, gets adopted by a backstreet kind of mechanic called Alfred, who ends up kind of educating him in all of the kind of really cool things to do with mechanics and so on and so forth. He puts a bus engine into some kind of a Lincoln and becomes a street vigilante and goes around like busting up criminals. That is dark and nihilistic, and that would have still been something rather interesting to watch because Aronofsky would have done well with it. This is dark in a teenage emo, not even a committed teenage emo who's genuinely exploring something. This is oh, mum and dad, you don't understand me. I want to paint my bedroom black, and aren't I? This is an emo poser movie.
It is.
Yeah. And it's steeped in this weird sense of objectivism that they don't seem to really have a handle on. I mean, there's this through line running through the film of, I mean, like I was saying before, it seems to have a fundamental problem with the concept of heroism. It keeps hammering this idea of, well, if you try and be a hero, you're not going to be appreciated. Things are going to happen with worse consequences. I mean, that horrible 20-hour-long monologue by Kevin Costner on the mountaintop.
Yes.
About, having cake while... I mean, I actually wrote down the line. Alright. This is actually a line from the film. Where is it? Oh, yeah. While I ate my hero cake, the horses were drowning.
Wow.
That somehow got through 18,000 drafts at a major Hollywood studio. And the thing is, you sit through this monologue, and you have no idea what the hell he's going on about. I mean, I've been trying to unpack it the last few days, because there's this through line of, oh, being a hero, people don't appreciate it. You're going to be victimized. Things are going to go wrong.
As a point, that's not necessarily bad in and of itself, but not right the way through the whole movie. That's one trope that could be addressed in a few minutes.
And it also kind of misses the point of what heroism is. Heroism is about the attempt, the desire to do something right. Whereas this takes this approach of, oh, well, no, the results might not be what you want, so it's not worth it. It's not. It's not quite the point of that principle.
Which is also interesting. Is it the Fountainhead he wants to do next?
Yeah.
So Zack Snyder's next big project is going to be an adaptation of some Ayn Rand, the source material. Which, once you know that, you start to, and you realise perhaps he is somewhat of a fan of Ayn Rand. That begins to explain some of this a little bit better, and the kind of the patriarchal attitudes and the kind of screw you, I've got to do this my way, I don't care if anyone else does it. In fact, you know what, if anyone else criticises me, I'm just going to shit all over them as best I can because this is my toy.
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely, explore the concept of heroism, and what happens when people don't respond how you think, or what happens when other circumstances come up and things don't line up exactly the right way. But it's a tonal thing. It's exploring it, but sort of having your character still behave like a hero is one thing, whereas this is just sort of wallowing in this nihilism.
Okay.
Right,
so finally, one last point with regards to this. Where now for the Justice League franchise? Because that's what this film has been busy setting up. Clunkily, but for good or ill, that's what we've got coming.
Yeah, I think the problem with it is, Marvel took their time setting up their own universe. We had Iron Man, which was just about Iron Man, and then after the credits, Sam Jackson turns up, blah blah blah, Avengers program, and that was essentially the setup for where they were going to go from there. Basically, this film's trying to cram everything at once, throwing every superhero they've got at the screen, no matter how brief, and it just makes it all confusing.
Do we reckon that the rest of the films are going to take a hit or be a hit with regards to this? Because, for example, the Wonder Woman movie was teased in this. If she's anywhere near as good as she is in this movie and there's somebody else at the helm, I have a lot of hope for this.
Well, it depends on the kind of story that they're going to do for it. Like, is this like a current Wonder Woman thing? Because we know that she is around for ages and ages and ages.
I believe the Wonder Woman is going to be in the First World War.
Okay, well that's kind of cool. I'd be interested to see something that's not in our age, and it's the same kind of thing of there's some diabolical villain or something, and we have to save him, and everyone's got iPhones out, and everyone sees things, and it all goes bad because people are assholes. Like, I'd prefer to see something a bit older, with a bit more base, and especially with these characters. Like, I know everyone knows of them, like everyone knows who Batman, Superman is and stuff, but the thing is, a lot of people, they don't realise like the history of these characters and where they come from. So I was speaking to someone at work about the movie and talking about Wonder Woman, and they didn't even know that she was Amazonian. It's like, yes, they knew who she was, but they didn't know anything about her. So I think it would be good if they had some of these movies as setting that up, rather than just...
And I think with the Wonder Woman one, it is an origin story there. And then we also have Suicide Squad, which is going to be out in the next few months. And again, that from the trailers have done much better on that one, particularly the Bohemian Rhapsody one. And that looks like it's... Yeah, that looks like it's good. Margot Robbie. But all of them, for that matter. It looks like it's going to be a whole heap of fun, and it might actually be good. And that's another thing that's missing from this movie. Fun.
Well,
this is Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice was not fun. There was a brief moment when Batman has rescued Superman's mum, whereas he's saying, "I'm a friend of your son's." Oh yeah, I figured. The case.
That was funny.
That's the only time I laughed in the entire sodding movie.
The thing I found with the movie is, I found like I was sitting there and I was like, oh man, this scene's like really intense. Like the movie, like the sound, like the music is like really picking up, and then like there's all these lights and action, and then like the next scene was pretty much the exact same thing. And I started thinking about like not even halfway through, I'm like, Jesus, if all the scenes are action packed and special, none of them are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, by halfway through of it, I was like, oh, okay, it's another supposedly action-packed scene. It's not really hitting a punch, because they're all like that. You know,
Yeah.
you can only go up, 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 and then you're just going to plateau on it.
Well, all I can say is I hope that the rest of the Justice League movies don't simply look at the box office takings for this.
Batman's supposed to be in Suicide Squad, isn't he?
Well, maybe he will be, I don't know.
I heard that, yeah, they're putting Batman's going to be in
Cool.
Suicide Squad.
You know what?
And, I mean-
I've heard news, I've heard rumours, as I'm sure of many people, of this possibility that Affleck would like to write and direct and star in his own Batman movie. To which I would say, that's fine, go ahead. I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll do a better job than Mr. Snyder did.
Look, I think with this, I mean, misgivings about or Warner Brothers' general direction aside, I think the thing with this movie is, well, it's a director problem.
Yeah.
So much of this movie is shaped by Zack Snyder
Yes.
and his own sort of weird proclivities, which we've seen so many times before. I think that with the other films, hopefully with directors with better sense of storytelling, that will make up for a lot of it. I mean, I don't think this necessarily ruins the whole thing.
No.
But I think it puts a bit of pressure on these other films now to actually come back
Yeah.
and be more entertaining and have a better idea of what they are.
Okay, well, I think for the moment we're going to have to wrap that one up because we're running short of time here. We have been Mike, Cav and Shani presenting the There Will Be Geek podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, there is the There Will Be Geek podcast page on Facebook. We are at There Will Be Geek on Twitter. There is also therewillbegeek@gmail.com if anyone's interested in getting in touch with us via that. You can also, if you wanted to, reach Cav personally.
Yep, I can. I write for Metro Magazine, which should be available in most newsagents. So it's one of Australia's premier film magazines. So you can find me writing for them.
And Shani also has her own channel.
Yes, you can follow my gaming adventures on YouTube at PrimaCat. I'll leave a link down in the description if you want to just check up on what I'm doing. There is a PrimaCat Facebook page, and I'm also on Twitter, so come on along.
That's grand, and obviously you can get in touch with me via the Facebook page. We will shortly be setting up a Facebook group as well. In the meanwhile, thank you very much for listening. We will be back in a couple of weeks' time with another subject as yet to be decided. But for now, we're finished!